My name is Guruprasad. I'm the Joint Managing Director and CTO at Bosh. And today I'm going to give you a little more insight into the technologies and trends that are shaping all the changes in mobility that's coming our way. We had an excellent context from Kamal and Jyoti, so a lot of my job is becoming easier. And I think the way these sessions go, we could actually progressively reduce the time for the speakers at the end, and finally the guys in the end will have very little to say. Okay, so I always start when I speak of trends with this thing from Donella Meadows. It's about systems thinking. Basically what it does is there are always paradigms which move, one from an older paradigm moving into a newer paradigm. And there is sometimes a bridge between no more and not yet. And that's the bridge you see. And in case of mobility, we believe, at least I think everybody on the stage here today will vouch for that we are somewhere on that bridge right now. Lots of things are changing, lots of changes will happen our way, and this is how things change. And the kind of transformation we've been seeing in the auto world is pretty rapid. And this makes it a very, very interesting time for us to be part of sessions like this, where it's an opportunity to also network, understand, and see what change comes our way. So I'll go to the next. Oh, I don't know what happens. Okay. So we've been tracking trends, and Kaushik talked about how things move in scenarios when innovation changes from one frontier to another. And I think you can also put that like Donella Meadows does in the form of S-curves, which is a very typical way of explaining how technology or transformations happen. If you look at the first S-curve on the dark blue pattern, you can treat that as a technology curve which has been with us for nearly 100 years with small changes along the way. And it's brought us to where we are today. So it's something which has been evolutionary. It's done its job extremely well. It's brought in a lot of technology into the auto sector, and it's changed the way we drive and a lot of things, but it's also running its course. So at some point of time, very soon, we believe these trends will start to come down. A lot of them, a lot of technology which is riding this trend, for example, is the combustion engine technology. So we're very used to that. We're used to cars, which you can see on the left, which have very basic user experience inside the car, very basic comfort features. So lots of things are pretty basic, as we can see. But now already, we start to see the second S-curve developing in the mobility area. And that's what makes our job so much easier, so much interesting. And the change to the new S-curve brings with it a massive amount of change for all of us as technology people and people who are riding this new wave of mobility and who will drive the change in mobility. So some of the elements which drive the new form of mobility are things which Jyoti just talked about in the context of Volvo, and I'll go a little bit deeper into what are the technology trends which come in, and how are the vehicle architectures getting influenced, and what's the big role we see for engineers of the future as we can move along. So electrification is a trend that's sort of left the station, whether we like it or not. It's something that's there. Lots and lots of OEMs have already announced a sort of a ZEV or zero emission vehicle only date. Some have also announced a mix of ZEV dates. If you look at the big bunch, they're all centered around the 2030s. So around 2030, majority of the OEMs will likely not have new vehicle designs which are purely based on combustion technology. So there could still be facelifts and such products coming in, but technology introduction into the current platforms will start to get lesser and lesser. 2030 is a time when we also believe huge amount of electric vehicles will start to appear in the market, and we already see the trend of that, and we see how rapidly this is going as we move forward. So this leads to many changes, and I specifically stress on electrification because it's a bedrock technology which will carry multiple technologies that will come forward that will ride on it as we move forward. And European Union has already legislated sort of 2035 to be the end of combustion engines. So everything is falling in place to have a much cleaner era of vehicles as we move forward. Closer home, we also see multiple other convergences coming in. And I saw a Tata Nexon parked outside. I think it's a good example of how we can make cars in India which are fit for the Indian market and which become really, really popular. And you see trends which are global also catching up at the same pace in India as we see in the West today. So gone are the days when we would lag 15 years, 20 years, or sometimes 10 years to get new technologies into India. But we now start to see higher premiumization of our cars and lots of new technologies coming in. And I'm not specifically talking about cars. It can also be motorbikes, scooters, everything that runs, or trucks that run on the roads today. So software and services is a key element which is coming in, and that's something that will shape the mobility industry in a big way over the next 10, 15 years. Personalization and connectivity trends will also shape in-vehicle experience quite a bit. Safety is becoming very, very clear and very important. So majority of the Indian OEMs now talk of 4 and 5 star global NCAP rated vehicles already on Indian roads today, which is a very good recognition of the quality of work they've been doing. Technologies like ESP have reached a good level of penetration even without a legislation, which is a good indicator that technology introduction happens very well when cost economics and user experience starts to pick up. Automated may not be really there yet in the Indian context, but something closer to a level 2 automation is something that's definitely starting to appear on many cars now. Electrification, of course, we've seen announcements from the big guys, we've seen announcements from Tata and Mahindra, so this is something that's really coming in. And a new trend of very high level of SUVs coming into the Indian market, largely maybe related to the way our roads are or the infrastructure is, but this is also a trend that we see, which should help the vehicle of the future quite a bit because new technologies ride well on some of these platforms. So I said earlier, electrification is a sort of a bedrock technology which carries multiple elements well, because this is an area where with electrification there is very little legacy. And when you don't have legacy, you can start to do architectural designs which are fundamentally very, very different. And that also helps bring in new forms of or new domains into the vehicles, like personalization, like automation, connectivity, or complete electrifications extremely well, and interlink all of them, because that's the trend we start to see with generation 5 or 4, generation 4 and 5 technologies coming in into the cars of the future. Now, if we go a little bit deeper into what's happening or what's underneath all this, what makes this work, it's basically how the electrical and electronic architectures are being done in the vehicles of the future. And if you look at the bottom left, we had a very, very distributed architecture earlier. And as we move forward in the vehicle architectures, we start to see much higher levels of domain centralization coming in. And that makes it very, very interesting to put multiple technologies, including multiple domains together. And that's very essential to have multiple features coming in, multiple technologies coming in. And some of the things which Jyoti showed in terms of how the vehicle is connected to the infrastructure, or vehicle is connected to another vehicle, or in-vehicle entertainment happens, is all only possible when you have very high levels of domain centralization in the architectures. And this is a very critical element. Also moving further into technologies around software. So the software-defined vehicles, software in the vehicle is becoming so complex that today's car is an extremely advanced version of what was even 5 years ago. And this makes it a very, very difficult proposition to design platforms which can be sustainably made and continuously enhanced in terms of features if you remain on older technologies. Sometimes it's simply not even possible. So in that configuration, it's very critical that domain centralization of the architectures happens, and the vehicle moves more towards a software-defined vehicle, which is the big trend we now start to see. And this provides multiple carrier technologies which can connect in-vehicle entertainment, car-to-car connections, car-to-infrastructure connections. And of course, there is a big service layer coming in where you can create mobility solutions, because a car eventually becomes a thing in the Internet of Things. And then the car gets over-the-air updates, lots of features come in, lots of new updates come in. Today you can sit in a Tesla and play games which can be refreshed live as you go further. So a lot of these things will keep getting advanced, and this is one of the basic things that's changing in the vehicles of the future. So when this domain and domain centralization happens in terms of electrical architectures or EE architectures, the picture of the car on the left is showing a state where we are today. The one on the right is something which is a sort of a reflection of how centralization brings in far more advances in technology. So the vehicle computers of the future are going to be, or even in some of the cars today, like for example a Tesla, is extremely complicated and complex amount of computing that's coming in, which is capable of processing multiple inputs, multiple sensors, fusion of sensors, getting data into the clouds, and lots of things which are required to make autonomous vehicles happen. So that's something which is very, very essential. And we also start to see very clear definition of boundaries coming into the vehicle domains. For example, powertrain and electrification as a domain, autonomous driving, infotainment, body electronics, connectivity, or things about motion and traction. So these are clear domains that are coming in. And underneath it all is the basic layer of hardware and technology that resides underneath that, all the sensors and the basic sensor fusion that happens. And starting from then on, we have multiple levels of software coming in, which makes the car a sort of a, I mean, it's a crude analogy, but it's more like the smartphone on wheels. So it's something becoming very, very complex, and it's something which brings in lots of technologies into the cars as we move forward. So what's in it for us is that with all these domains being created, requirements start to flow in a different direction. The vehicle architectures start to get defined in a very different direction, which leads to the car of the future to be extremely different from what it is or what it was maybe 10 years ago. So to wrap it up, The mobility landscape, the ecosystem, and in fact even the value chain will change significantly as we move forward. We already start to see the trends of this, and this will only increase as we go forward. The value chain definitely will change. The position in the value chain, what the OEM does, what a tier 1 does, what an ecosystem provider does, all of them are now up for redefinition. The vehicle features, the user experience, elements of pace, the personalized, automated, connected, and electrified will definitely bring in huge amount of technology into the vehicles. And of course, this new age of mobility will require a huge amount of capital, that's for sure. And that's something which will decide how quickly we can adopt these technologies. And of course, huge amount of talent. And we already see the talent wars in the automotive industry. That's something which is very, very difficult to manage as of now. But this is something that will also define who has the best talent, starts to sort of win this war. And of course, there will be multiple new business models which will come as we move forward. So it's, in my view, an exciting time to be in the auto industry right now, and very, very good prospect as we go forward, both in terms of technology and in terms of how the consumers experience the vehicle of the future. Thank you.